Alina Grant was halfway through slide 42 when the knock came, light, hesitant, the kind that carried bad news in polite disguise. She didn't look up. "Come in," she called, eyes still on the projected financials. The risk disclosure section was bloated again. That meant Ethan had been adjusting the numbers. Typical. She'd ask Mia in finance to trace it later. The door opened and closed softly. Footsteps. Silence. Alina finally looked up. It was Ryan, the new legal hire fresh out of NYU, face too young for the kind of suit he wore. He held a tablet like it might explode. His Adam's apple jumped. "Miss Grant," he said softly. I'm supposed to inform you that you've been terminated." Alina blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Terminated?" "Ryan, I'm presenting to the board in 20 minutes." She gave a short laugh. "Nice try. Who put you up to this?" "Ethan?" He didn't answer. Instead, he turned the tablet toward her. On the screen glowed a document titled Executive Separation and Buyout Agreement, Alina L. Grant. Signed. Dated. Timestamped. 8:07 a.m. Alina's gaze darted to the wall clock. 9:11 a.m. Impossible, she murmured. "I didn't sign anything." Ryan swallowed hard. "HR routed it already. Your badge access is deactivated. You're no longer on the active roster." The air seemed to thicken. The only sound was the hum of the projector fan and the quick, nervous shift of Ryan's shoes against the floor. "That's not my signature," Alina said finally. Ryan hesitated. "It looks like yours." She gave a dry little laugh. "And who told you to bring this to me? Let me guess, Ethan and legal?" He didn't deny it, just nodded faintly. Alina leaned back, folded her hands on the table, and smiled a smile so tight it could cut glass. "Tell you what, Ryan. Walk with me." "Walk where?" "To the boardroom." "Ms. Grant, I don't think you're allowed." "Oh, honey," she interrupted, rising smoothly. "If you think a PDF and a revoked badge can stop me from leading my own meeting, then you haven't been here long." Alina picked up her leather portfolio, slid her glasses inside, and smoothed the lapel of her navy blazer as if brushing dust off a tombstone. She gestured to the door. "Let's go." Ryan followed, clutching the tablet like it was radioactive. Her heels struck the tile with calm, sharp confidence, the sound of someone who had built this company while most of its executives were still interns. Inside, beneath her steady exterior, something had awakened. Not fear, not anger, but recognition. This wasn't a mistake. It was a move. And she'd seen this game before. They reached the elevator. Ryan swiped his badge. "Nothing." "Oh," he said weakly. "They must have killed my guest access too." Alina reached into her bag, pulled out a brass key, and opened the stairwell door herself. They climbed in silence. She didn't pant, didn't slow. She just counted the steps, each one closer to the truth. 5th floor. Boardroom ahead. Murmured laughter inside. Coffee cups clinking. The calm before the storm. Ryan hesitated at the handle. "If that's really your signature." Alina looked back at him. "Then I suppose we'll find out who I am without a badge." She pushed the door open mid-laugh. 7 board members froze around a polished glass table. The projector on the wall still displayed her title, Director of Strategic Operations, Alina Grant. Her chair at the end stood empty, until she filled it. Conversation stopped. Coffee cups hovered midair. Even Ethan, her CEO, once her intern, froze mid-sip, his monogrammed mug trembling like it knew a storm was coming. Alina entered like she owned the air itself. Ryan trailed behind her, pale and shaking, tablet in hand like a holy curse. No one spoke. No one breathed. Then Ryan's trembling voice cracked the silence. "Ms. Grant has been removed from the active roster as of 8:07 this morning." He tapped the screen. "Per Section 4B of the buyout, her badge is deactivated. This," he zoomed in, "is her signature." Alina stepped forward, studied the glowing document. Her own name. Her own penmanship. The date matched. Someone had worked hard to make it real. Her gaze shifted across the table. At the far end sat Sharon Park, head of legal, usually a woman of marble composure. But now Sharon stared fixedly at her water glass, tracing condensation like it was scripture. Alina's eyes moved to Ethan. He didn't blink. His knuckles whitened around his mug. He opened his mouth, shut it, then forced a brittle smile. "Alina," he said lightly, "there's been a misunderstanding." "Apparently," she replied evenly, "one where I'm not supposed to exist." A twitch passed across his cheek. "Look," he tried, placing the mug down. "Let's take this offline. It's probably just a clerical." Alina raised her hand, sharp and deliberate. "I'd like to begin." The tone silenced the room. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "Ms. Grant, you're not on the roster. It says you've accepted the severance." "Then I suppose I'm doing this pro bono," she said coolly. A ripple of unease moved around the table. 3 weeks before that morning, Alina had sat in the same glass-walled boardroom, sipping lukewarm coffee while nodding through yet another meeting about Q2 synergies. That was when she noticed the first crack. It wasn't dramatic, no whispering behind doors, no sudden hostility. Just a calendar invite. Or rather, a missing one. It was for the quarterly budget review, and it went out to every executive, except her. She only found out because Mia from finance leaned over during a one-on-one and asked, "You moving your slot to Friday or skipping it?" Alina blinked. "What slot?" Mia frowned. "The budget sync. Ethan said you'd rescheduled." Alina smiled faintly. "Ah, must have missed the memo." But there was no memo. No explanation. Just silence. The first sign of a knife wasn't always the cut, it was the absence of sound before it. Clue 2 arrived courtesy of Cody, the clumsiest intern in Langford Systems' chaotic history. He meant to forward the updated org chart to legal. Instead, he sent it to A. Grant. Alina opened it one quiet Sunday afternoon while sorting tax receipts. Halfway through, her heart went cold. Her name wasn't on it. Not demoted. Not reassigned. Erased. Her position, Director of Strategic Operations, had been merged into a vague new division called Planning and Efficiency, headed by none other than Ethan's new protege, Bryce Lang. Bryce, whose greatest skill was saying synergistic disruption, without choking. Alina didn't panic. Didn't text Ethan. Didn't rage. She brewed another cup of black coffee, sat at her dining table, and opened the legal pad. On one page, she wrote assets. On another, liabilities. Then allies. And finally, ghosts. Under ghosts, she wrote one name in block letters, Trillium Holdings LLC. Trillium Holdings. The name pulsed in her memory, like a warning light. It was her old real estate umbrella, formed in 2008, back when she dabbled in commercial properties. She'd never shut it down, just paid the bare minimum to keep it legally alive. Most executives had retirement plans. Alina had a corporate skeleton. She scrolled through her phone contacts and found an old number. Derek Ellis, Tax and Entity Management. He picked up on the second ring. "Alina. Jesus, I thought you'd retired or died." "Neither," she said calmly. "I need Trillium reactivated. Fully. Quietly." He chuckled. "Still got the yen?" "In the folder marked Insurance Fraud and Other Light Reading," she replied dryly. A pause. "You expecting rain?" "I'm expecting fire," she said. "And I just want to own the hydrant." That night, while the company's Slack buzzed with memes about Bryce's loafers, Alina was writing a new ending. She reactivated Trillium Holdings. She updated the registered agent, reinstated its operating license, and transferred 5 dormant Class C shares from her personal record into the entity's name. No alarms went off. No one noticed. Because Alina Grant didn't rage. She calculated. She understood that power didn't shout, it filed paperwork. By midnight, Trillium was fully active again. A silent shareholder waiting for the right trigger. And when Ethan tried to bury her, that trigger would pull itself. 2 weeks before her firing, Alina sat in her office with blinds drawn, tablet glowing before her. She practiced signing her name 3 times, each version slightly different. One trembling, one steady, one perfect. She saved all three. Someone would find them later and believe a story. A tired woman, uncertain, emotional. A woman giving up. That illusion was her shield. She then logged into the company's internal portal, not through her account, but her former assistant's, whose password she'd cracked years ago. Through that portal, she submitted transition documents, routine HR forms for retiring executives. She reassigned her projects to Bryce. Included red herrings, like a fake initiative titled Opal Matrix Assessment. Then she attached one final file, the share proxy transfer. The moment Ethan signed her buyout, he'd unknowingly trigger the clause that returned all her strategic authority to Trillium Holdings LLC. Langford Systems had 3 share classes. Class A for public trade, Class B for partners, and Class C, the forgotten relics issued to early strategic advisors. Alina had 5 of them, old as the company itself, sitting idle. But buried in a 2003 agreement was a single line no one had ever bothered to read. Involuntary executive separation, not resulting from board vote or ethics breach, shall revert proxy voting rights to the original holder of record. Meaning, if someone fired her without a formal board decision, all her voting authority went back to the original shareholder. And the original holder of record was Trillium Holdings LLC. By the time Ethan signed her termination PDF, he'd handed over the company's steering wheel to her own ghost corporation. The next morning, Alina texted Derek. "The house is bought. They just don't know who moved in." He replied with a single emoji, a flame. That day she didn't celebrate, didn't even smile. She simply sat by her apartment window, watching rain trail down the glass. This wasn't revenge. This was architecture. She wasn't burning the building down. She was removing the foundation brick by brick, quiet, precise, irreversible. And when gravity did its work, nobody would hear the collapse until the dust hit their shoes. Now, standing in that boardroom again, she watched Ethan sweat through his expensive shirt. "You can't just walk in here," he snapped, his voice too loud. "You don't have standing." Alina tilted her head. "Then you've read the full agreement." That shut him up. One of the newer board members, an older man with silver hair and calm eyes, looked up from the printed packet. "We're all a bit unclear, Ms. Grant," he said carefully. "Perhaps you can clarify." "Of course," she said, her tone like ice cracking. Ryan, scroll to section 6.3. Ryan fumbled the tablet. "Why, yes, Ms. Grant." He read aloud, voice trembling. "Upon execution of the buyout, all strategic authority and board proxy privileges shall revert to the original holder of record for Class C equity units." He glanced up. "That's Trillium Holdings LLC." Ethan froze. "You're affiliated with that entity?" Alina smiled faintly. "I am that entity." The silence that followed felt physical, like the air itself held its breath. Ethan's face drained. "This is fraud." "Fraud requires deceit," she said evenly. "All documents are public. Filed, notarized, traceable. You can verify every line." Legal counsel Sharon flipped through her folders, her hands shaking for the first time in memory. "The filings are clean," she murmured. "Her claim holds." Alina folded her arms behind her back. "When you executed my termination, you triggered your own clause. My employment became irrelevant. The company's own bylaws reinstated my strategic authority through Trillium." The words hung like smoke. Ethan looked like someone had whispered his funeral date. "You can't," Ethan began. "I can," Alina interrupted. "And I will." One director cleared his throat. "Then, Ms. Grant, what do you intend?" Alina tapped the projector remote. The next slide appeared. Trigger clauses, oversight in corporate governance. "In short," she said, "you handed me the keys, thinking I was walking out the door." A ripple went through the board. Ethan looked from face to face, searching for support that wasn't there. "You orchestrated this," he hissed. "I defended myself with the tools you built," she said. "There's a difference." Murmurs rose. Phones vibrated. Lawyers started drafting excuses in their heads. Too late. 8 days earlier, Alina had sat in her kitchen surrounded by dusty folders, Trillium's old incorporation papers. The edges were yellowed, the corners rusted with ancient paper clips. Each sheet smelled of paper, coffee, and quiet vengeance. She'd built Trillium in 2007 during her real estate phase. When the market crashed, she sold everything but never dissolved the entity. She kept paying the annual fees year after year. Because she knew the rule. The way to survive wasn't to climb their ladder, but to build her own and wait for theirs to rot. Now that ladder was her weapon. On her laptop, she opened the Delaware State Portal, filed the reactivation notice, amended the operating agreement to include legacy proxy rights. Then she added one more detail. Trillium would automatically vote on all matters tied to her equity unless reassigned. It was legal, quiet, invisible. Next, she registered a backup proxy, Derek, in case she disappeared. Then she filed a UCCC statement asserting Trillium's right over non-diluted shares and strategic control. 3 filings, 3 approvals. By dawn, Trillium Holdings LLC was no longer a ghost. It was a living shareholder with 51% triggered voting authority. When the final confirmation came through, Alina sipped her coffee and replied to a colleague's casual message. Just in case things get weird, there's an opening at Archer Tech. She typed back, appreciate it. Things are already weird. Let them think she was done. Let them underestimate her by the time HR hit send. On her fake termination, Trillium already owned the boardroom. They thought they'd written her out of the story. They didn't realize she'd been holding the pen the entire time. Back in the boardroom, Ethan's confidence cracked. This is absurd, he shouted. You can't have the authority. You gave it to me, Alina said calmly. The moment you signed the buyout without reading section 6.3. She tapped the remote again. The next slide appeared. Unauthorized budget modifications. The numbers hit like bullets. $427,000 reallocated without board approval. $38,000 charged for client dinners with no clients. Funds funneled to shell firms tied to Bryce Lang, his protege. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Sharon leafed through her notes, pale. Alina's voice never wavered. You didn't just fire me, Ethan. You fired your own safety net. Cufflink man leaned forward. Do you have documentation? Alina nodded to a flash drive on the table. Chronological. Watermarked. Off-site backups stored with counsel. Sharon's throat bobbed. She's telling the truth. Ethan's lips trembled. You tricked us. I didn't trick you, she said. I simply read what you refused to. The boardroom fell silent again, dead, heavy silence that carried consequence. Now, she continued, I believe we have grounds for an accelerated executive review under Clause 9.2. The board members looked at one another. Ethan's downfall had just begun. Warren, the silver-haired director, leaned back. She's within her rights, he said. Trillium holds the proxy. Ethan turned red. You've known me for years. And I've known her longer, Warren said. You were her intern, remember? Ethan's mouth opened, closed, useless. Alina stood still, her calm now heavier than any threat. This isn't personal, she said quietly. It's structural. She tapped again. Succession review. Charts appeared on the wall. Graphs. Audit trails. The quiet hum of power-shifting hands. Ethan's voice cracked. This is sabotage. This is accountability, Alina replied. You planned this for months. No, she said evenly. I prepared for years. He slammed a hand on the table. You manipulated the system. I understood it. Her words cut like glass. Sharon finally spoke. She's right. His actions triggered an automatic review. The directors murmured among themselves. Phones vibrated again. Text to lawyers, investors, PR. The room smelled faintly of coffee and panic. Alina clicked again. The projector filled with numbers, charts, and internal emails. She spoke without raising her voice. 3 months ago, compliance budgets were rerouted. 2 months ago, internal audits were halted. 4 weeks ago, Bryce Lang was listed as Director of Operations in an investor memo, without authorization. The younger directors leaned forward, stunned. Those documents, she said, were used to solicit bridge funding, meaning Langford Systems misrepresented its leadership to investors. Gasps rippled across the table. Congratulations, Alina said softly. You didn't just fire your director. You committed securities fraud. Cufflink man cleared his throat. We need a motion. I'm drafting one, Warren said without looking up. Ethan's voice was almost a whisper. You don't have the right. Alina cut him off. You gave it to me, remember? Sharon looked up from the folder. She's correct. Silence followed, final, suffocating silence. I move, Warren said, to remove CEO Ethan Cross pending investigation into unauthorized actions and financial misconduct. Seconded, said another. All in favor? Hands rose, firm and unshaking. All opposed. Nothing. Ethan slumped in his chair. His cufflinks caught the light, two useless pieces of silver dangling off a man who'd just lost everything. No shouting now. No arrogance. Just a hollow quiet. A director slid his phone across the table. A pre-drafted message to HR. Begin separation process per board directive. Immediate. Alina didn't smile. She simply nodded once. She clicked her remote. The projector went dark. The war was over before anyone realized it had begun. Warren turned toward her. Then I suppose you'll be stepping in as interim CEO. Alina shook her head. No. The board blinked. I never wanted the throne, she said quietly. I wanted the termites out of the walls. A younger director frowned. Then who leads? Jenna Albright, she said. Finance. She's been cleaning up your messes for months. Never asked for credit. Never looked the other way. The room murmured. No one objected. Warren nodded. We'll review her appointment in closed session. Alina reached into her portfolio and pulled out a sealed ivory envelope with her name written across the front. She handed it to Sharon. My actual resignation, she said. Dated, signed, effective tomorrow. This one's my signature. Sharon accepted it like holding fire. Alina adjusted her blazer, gathered her things, and turned toward the door. Behind her, the room erupted into motion, phones dialing, voices rising, legal scrambling to interpret what just happened. She didn't turn around. She walked past the reception desk, down the corridor that still had her name on the routing chart. As she waited for the elevator, she pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. At the top sat one line she'd written months ago. If they ever come for you, don't fight them head-on. Make sure they trip over the rope you already tied around their ankles. The elevator dinged. She stepped inside, calm, composed. As the door slid shut, she let herself exhale. Not relief, completion. They had tried to erase her. Instead, she'd rewritten the ending in ink they couldn't wash off. Down she went, floor by floor, past the empire she'd built, past the arrogance she'd outlived. When the doors opened, she stepped out into the lobby sunlight. Cool. Still. Untouchable. Outside, the city moved like nothing had happened. Cars honking, coffee carts steaming, people rushing to meetings that would never know her name. Alina didn't look back at the building. She didn't need to. Inside those glass walls, chaos was unfolding. But she'd left them something better than revenge. A reminder. Empires fall not from fire, but from the cracks they choose to ignore. She adjusted her bag, stepped onto the sidewalk, and smiled faintly to herself. They thought they'd deleted her. She'd simply hit edit. And this time, she owned the final draft.